Thank you so much for everyone for coming. I am going to try and multitask here with this microphone. But my name is Craig Galloway. I am a solutions architect at Ingram Micro, and we work very closely with the likes of PB Tech to have sessions like this and hopefully share some knowledge for you to take away within your business, for you to have a better idea as to how to apply a certain product and how topical it would be, because we're talking about AI once again. Now, we previously did sessions around, just turn the gain up. We did sessions around Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot. We did sessions around Copilot Studio. And we now have a new kid on the block. And that new kid on the block is called Copilot Cowork. And I think that this tool is going to be one of those tools that is going to be widely adopted if we can get the cost management right. The cost management of this tool is pivotal to making sure that you get the right return on investments. And hopefully today, when you walk out here, you're going to understand the options you have, first of all, how to utilize the tool, what the tool can do for you, so you can make a calculated decision as to which business unit gets the tool, do we need the tool, and if we do need the tool, how do we actually manage the costs associated with it? I promise I'm not just going to talk to slide decks. I am going to dive into a little bit of demos so we get a better understanding of the tool, the capabilities of it, and just get a bit of a feel for what it can do for us. So just from a quick agenda type of thing, just the architecture, the capabilities of the tool, what it does, what it comes built in with, what we can do to make it more intelligent from a skills perspective. You can see I've even put it in gold because the billing and cost management for me is key for the success of the deployment of this tool. And then just an adoption and a wrap up. So from a Microsoft 365 Copilot perspective, we've had this tool for a while now. It's probably been 3-4 years, and I've certainly seen it grow in stature. I've seen it grow in its capability. When it first started, myself and Alex, we talk about it often, where we had our little first webinar, and I really struggled to get it to do anything, to be honest with you. It was a very premature launch, in my opinion, but it certainly has matured a lot, and it actually has found a way to be helpful within the businesses. And the Copilot chat piece of it, where we prompt it, is a great tool in its own, but it is still driven by a prompt. So that means that us as the users have to tell it, hey, please go and do this. It'll give you a response. And then we iterate and we say, please do that. And it gives us a response. So the automation piece is lacking when it comes to a Microsoft 365 Copilot perspective. So introducing Cowork. Now Cowork basically says, all right, cool. I love you, Microsoft 365 Copilot, but I'm going to steal your agents, and I'm going to wrap automation around it, and I'm going to just give my end user the most power they have, including what you have. So if we look at what Cowork can do, it moves from a prompting engine to a delegation engine, where we delegated tasks for it to do on our behalf. So we can say, create me a trigger, create me this automation piece that when a mail comes into my mailbox, draft me emails, create calendar entries, create me documents. If this happens, create me a draft, and then build out the statement of work for me automatically. So it sits in the background, and it basically does a whole bunch of work for us without us actually having to prompt it to do so. So it basically works in 3 execution layers. So basically what happens is we have the planning. So we basically have an understanding of what we want it to do, and we're going to delegate this task to it. So one of the biggest takeaways, if you compare, which we really shouldn't because they're all completely different tools, but if we compare Microsoft 365 Copilot to Cowork, one of the biggest things is that Cowork takes its time. It can take anything from 20, 30 minutes to 4 hours to complete a task. It is not there to be a rapid response. It's there to actually do its due diligence, understand what it's building out, ask you questions for feedback as to, am I doing this correctly? And then build out a output that is valuable to the delegation that you've given it. So it basically executes across anything within your Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So what that means is it has access to your Outlook, Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive. It has access to all of the knowledge that you have access to, and it can also execute on your behalf. All right, so that is probably one of the biggest changes we'll see, where we prompt Microsoft 365 Copilot to do something. Cowork will go and grab those things and do it for you. And you'll see that in the demo itself. And then basically it delivers on that output. Now, that output can be as simple as drafting me an email, or it can be draft me an email, create me a Word document, create me a PowerPoint presentation, then build me a dashboard to present this presentation rather than using a PowerPoint presentation. And it can go and do all of that with a single delegation. We don't have to iterate the prompts every time. So you can see where its value comes in is really around its strength, its knowledge, its intelligence, and its skills that it has capability for. So you can see here, this is just a side-by-side comparison between Microsoft 365 Copilot and Copilot Cowork. The interaction within 365 Copilot is single turn, so we basically prompt it and then iterate. Runtime is a lot quicker than Cowork is going to be. So if you decide to utilize Cowork, it really is understanding that it's not there to give you an answer quickly. Yes, you can ask it a simple question as in what's the weather like today, you'll get a quick answer. But if you ask it to create you a statement of work in M365 Copilot or in Cowork, you'll see Cowork will probably take 3 or 4 times longer because of the intelligence that it runs in the background. The scope is really for drafting, summarizing, and creating documents when we talk about 365 Copilot, whereas Copilot Cowork really becomes that personal assistant for you and sits in your desktop doing things on your behalf. From a control perspective, you drive every step, whereas Copilot Cowork basically pauses if it needs you to clarify something. If it understands your prompt and understands what you're delegating to it, it will continuously flow by itself without interrupting you. Billing. So one of the biggest things is M365 Copilot is a fixed cost. So we have a per seat price. That's what we pay every month and we utilize it, which is awesome for a business because it's predictable. Whereas the Copilot Cowork is usage-based. What that means is that we pay per token. And that token can depend on how complex the task is and how we prompt Cowork to do something. A kicker here is that Microsoft 365 Copilot is a prerequisite for you to actually utilize Cowork. So Microsoft has said, well, this is just me assuming this. Please don't take this as gospel. But basically, Cowork is so good that, in my opinion, it can probably replace 365 Copilot. But what Microsoft has said is that you need to license a user as a Microsoft 365 Copilot licensed user before they are eligible to use Copilot Cowork. Okay, so just keep that in mind that you need to have a baseline for that before you can use it. So like I said, we basically state in the task, it goes and does the plan. The biggest difference is in the execution itself. You can see there in gold where it says human approval but before each consequential action. So basically what it's saying there is as soon as it's going to do an action on your behalf, it's going to say, please review this, make sure that you're comfortable with this, and then I will send it. Or if you say to it, create me the email but put it into my drafts, then you won't get that human in a loop stoppage. So it's only when there's consequences to what I'm going to do on your behalf. In other words, I'm sending it out to an individual, I'm creating a document and sending it for signature, whatever that workflow might be, it'll stop and pause and ask you to approve what is created before actually sending it out. So it's highly intelligent from a human in the loop perspective, which I love because I believe any automation from an AI perspective where we're utilizing these large language models, we should certainly be putting a human in the loop in all of these flows because you've seen, I'm sure, that it can give you some garbage out as well. So we want to make sure that whatever it creates is adding value to us. Now, this is something where I'm sure there's people in the room here that are Claude fans. I'm a Claude fan, I use it myself as well. But you might use Claude within your business and you might say, well, Craig, what is the difference between me using Claude, connecting my Microsoft 365 ecosystem into Claude through like an MCP server or connector? Why not just get the same results through that? Now, you can get results that are similar or close, but there's one thing that the Microsoft ecosystem has that no one else will have because it is owned by Microsoft within their ecosystem, and it's called Work IQ. Now, what Work IQ does is it basically says, all right, Craig, I know who you are, I know what your title is, I know who you report to, I know who reports to you, I know all your emails that you have been sending day in, day out, so which projects you're working on, which projects are red flagged, which ones are green flagged. I understand all of that context of you as a user. So every single time that we prompt or delegate Cowork, Cowork's going to utilize that information. So an example there would be like, okay, cool, create me a statement of work for my manager to approve. What Cowork's going to do is it'll say, okay, I'm going to check who Craig's manager is, or I know who it is, and it will add a signatory page with my manager's name at it because it knows exactly who I'm reporting to. I can say to it, can you please create me a report on all of my projects that are currently behind, that are flagged as a risk? I don't have to go and name the projects or give source files. Because it has access to Work IQ, it'll go and find all my emails that we've spoken about. We might have a risk register with projects in it. We might have a RAG indicator with projects in it. And all of that then sits within this Work IQ and gets pulled through by Cowork automatically. So this Work IQ piece might sound like a small piece, but it is a massive, I would say, a massive improvement on the exports or the outputs that we get within the Microsoft ecosystem. So Work IQ is something that we will never get outside of the Microsoft ecosystem. So from a Cowork perspective, basically we have 8 actions. So we can send emails, schedule meetings, manage calendars, post in Teams. So we can basically say, if an email comes into this inbox and has the following words in it, then post in this Teams channel, say, hey, there's an urgent email that's come through from this client. So everyone knows that that email's there. It can create documents, so anything from Word, Excel, PowerPoint, PDF, it can create. It can do coding. It doesn't do coding on I suppose, a GitHub level or a Claude code level, but it basically does a bunch of coding for us. The enterprise search and the deep research is what works with the Work IQ piece. So it can go and do a bunch of research for you as well. If you are into that type of thing, researching your competitors, researching the new products that are coming out, that type of stuff. Have we done? Got a bit soft. Okay, cool. It can also do things like daily briefings. So if you want to just set it up and say, I want to greet my that team every day, you can basically set that up and it will greet your team every day in Teams and say, hey, how are you guys doing? Hope you have a good day type of thing. So you can do some fun stuff with it as well. And adaptive cards is something that you can use to get feedback. So basically almost like a survey piece, but you can create the cards and it's a very cool way of getting some new content out there. So basically what it is within the Copilot app. So if you go to m365.cloud.microsoft, you currently have that orchestrator piece. Cowork sits in that same look and feel. The only difference really is that we can run this in the background. So you could basically delegate 10 tasks. So if you walked into your office on a Monday morning and you said, all right, cool, Mr. Cowork, I want you to check flights to fly to London for these dates. I want you to create a statement of work that I'm going to present in London. These are the people I'm presenting to, maybe on this project. I also want you to then draft me a couple of emails, check my emails first, triage them, make sure that I haven't missed anything important. And you throw all of these tasks at Cowork and it will just systematically go through each of those and take its time and build it out. So you can go for coffee, come back and then see where it is. And if your coffee break's been long enough, you might have all of those outputs completed for you automatically. So I use it on a daily basis. And when I do use it, I feel like I'm cheating, to be honest with you, because it is that good. But it is a very, very, very cool way. All right, enough of me talking. I'm going to jump into a little bit of a demo. And I just want to show you exactly what it looks like and what the outputs look like. So I've obviously pre-done this because I didn't feel like we needed to sit for 20 minutes watching something get built out, but I'm going to show you exactly how I do it, and then I'll switch to what the result looks like. No trickery, I promise. It is exactly how I did it earlier. So I'm going to try and multitask here with my microphone in my pocket. All right, can you guys still hear me? Go. So you can see over here, I don't have any different UI. It's basically m365.cloud.microsoft or the Copilot app over here that you can see at the bottom. And we've got the switch between chat and Cowork. So you might have seen this already, but when you click on Cowork and it's not enabled, it'll have something on the top saying that you don't have access to Cowork. But basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to say to it over here, prepare me for tomorrow's customer meeting with North Harbour. So I'm basically mentioning the customer, and I'm asking it to just create a customer meet briefing with recent emails using calendar invites for details, and gave it a bit of a brief as to what I wanted to do. Now, a little bit of a cheat here is you could basically go to Copilot Chat, and you could say to it, hey, Chat, give me a good prompt to get this done. Chat will give you the prompt, you copy the prompt, and you paste it in over here, and off you go. Instead of you having to figure this out, and this is exactly what I did here. I didn't think of this. I said, this is what I'm trying to achieve. Give it to me in a nice structured format, and off it went and gave me that. So after a couple of minutes, you can see over here, it says, cool, here's my proposed plan, confirm the meetings, blah, 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 blah. And it asked me, do you want to approve my action plan? Okay. So in my prompt, I could have said, don't ask me for approval, just go ahead and do it. And it wouldn't wait and pause for me. It then went and built out the task. Okay, so what it built out was a Harbour Engineering meeting briefing. So it basically took, again, all of that work IQ context that I had, and it built out this Word document for me. Okay, now that's fantastic, but we can do that in Microsoft 365 Copilot. We could basically open up Word and say, hey, build this briefing out for me. The big difference is that all of these documents were sitting in my email, they were sitting in SharePoint, they were sitting in Teams channels, and it's taken all of those sources and actually combined it into a report. I did not have to be specific with the sources I wanted it to use. Because of that work IQ aspect, it actually had access to all of that data. All right. So that's great. We can build Word documents. So then I said to it, okay, cool, thank you very much. But I also need a PowerPoint presentation to deliver this to my leadership team. So it went out and said, okay, no problem, Craig. I can build out that PowerPoint presentation for you as well. And there it built out the presentation. So where we stand with our closing, what the sales risks will look like, what our projects risks, and I just built out a nice slide deck that I can go and present that data to my leadership team. So you can see how it is utilizing multiple skills. So with this prompt here, it basically used a Word agent in Microsoft Word, and it's used a PowerPoint agent in PowerPoint. Okay. Now what I said to it is, all right, cool. Now I want you to do some research for me. All right. So it would then use its default research agent to go and do something like that. But we can take it a step further and we can create something that's called skills. Now, just jumping back to my slide deck quickly. These skills are so cool because we can curate the skill to exactly what we wanted to achieve. So what I mean by that is I can go to ChatGPT today, I can go to Claude, I can go to Copilot and say, hey, research this for me, and you'll get answers, okay? But what if we want to research it to a specific refined boundary of suppliers, boundary of products, maybe a specific product set only within certain public available information? We can create a skill for Cowork to utilize, and it will do it on exactly the same basis every single time. So when we're building these skills, there might be a skill within your organization that you say, it does a good job, but I need it to be more refined. And then we start prompting it again, can you remove this? Can you look at that? And as soon as you start doing that, just remember, think of those skills that you can build. And I'll show you exactly how we build these skills, because surprise, surprise, we use AI to build the skill as well. We don't actually have to build it ourselves. So we basically have an intent, and whatever that intent is, we build it out into a skill, and that skill then guides how Cowork executes that research, that generation of a document. So you might want to put in things like, hey, these are my guardrails for when we're building out templates or outputs of a document. And then you can put that in that skill, and it will utilize that skill every time you build a document. So a skill is something that is very important, and this is probably one of the biggest kickers that we have within a Cowork over M365 Copilots is we can't add skills to M365 Copilots, but with Cowork, we can actually make it our own and actually make it more intelligent for us. So there are 13 built-in skills. Out of the box, if you sign up today and you get Cowork, you've got 13 built-in skills. Like I mentioned, you've got all the Word, Excel, PowerPoint, PDF agents. You've got scheduling, calendar management meetings, daily briefing, communication agents, and then the enterprise search and deep research, that Work IQ piece that we have there. So what does a skill look like? So it's a simple text file, to be honest with you, and it's saved as a .md file, which is short for Markdown, and it is all living in your individual OneDrive folder. So it's in OneDrive, Documents, Cowork, Skills, the skill name, and then every single file is skill, capital letters, .md, and that sits within your OneDrive folder. Okay, so we can build these out, and I'm going to show you a second how to do that. There is a limitation currently of 20 skills per person. So that means if you do 21, it's going to ignore the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, and you can run into intermittent issues because it's not sure which one to utilize. So just keep that in mind now. I do think this little cap will be dropped, but right now we've got a 20 cap, or 20 skill cap for that. One of the biggest things for me is that these skills are portable. So what that means is that any AI engine that you are using can take a skill if they support it. So I know, for example, Perplexity's got computer, they support skills. Claude has got Claude Cowork, they have skills. You can actually use those skills if you have them already, bring them into Copilot, Cowork, and utilize those. So a skill is transferable in and out of an ecosystem because it basically uses the same structure of that file for each of them. So skills are super important when it comes to the just the increase of the capability itself. Now, where I see value for this in a business is if you create a skill within a business unit for yourself and you've tested the skill's working well for you, then why wouldn't we share that with the rest of our team? So the way I see this is actually creating almost like a little working group where you say, hey guys, yes, we're utilizing Cowork, it's doing a good job for us, but can we create a skill to refine what we wanted to do? And you work on that skill together, almost like a working group. You standardize it together, and then basically that working group then publishes it out to the wider organization because it's been tested with multiple people. Multiple people have had inputs into it, and then you basically version control it as such. So it's a very niche way of thinking about it, that instead of me just building stuff for myself, maybe I can have a conversation with my wider team and actually get something built out that really works for our business. So you can see over here, basically a good skill has 4 parts. Now I'm showing you this just for interest because, like I said, we use AI to build this. We don't have to build it. Cowork will even go and rank or rate out of 100 your skill that you have. So let's say that your friend gives you a skill over the weekend, you're having a barbie, and they're like, oh, I've got a great skill for you, and you take it and you import it. That skill will then get rated by Cowork, and Cowork will say, hey, that skill looks good, but it's about a 66 out of 100. And then you say, oh, okay. And then I'll also say to you, do you want me to fix that? And you say, yes, please. And off it goes. And I've tried to get it to rate itself as 100, and it keeps telling me, sorry, there's always room for improvement. I'm not going to give it 100, but it's always in the 90s around there. Then you know that Cowork's pretty happy with its skill. I've even told it, you created the skill, make it 100. And it says, my capabilities are lacking in that. I do understand, and I'm sorry that I can't get you to 100, but it refuses to give me 100 out of 100 skill or score for one of my skills. So, but basically all it is a name and a description. When to trigger is probably the key one. So if I type this type of delegation, then I want you to trigger. Once it's triggered, what is it that it's actually going to do? Cool, I want you to go and research, but I want you to research within these boundaries. I want you to create a document, but I want you to create it within these boundaries. And then what the output expectations is. Do you want this in a dashboard? Do you want this in an Excel spreadsheet, PowerPoint presentation, multiple artifacts? So you basically then set what that expectation is from that skill itself. So quickly jumping into the demo again, I want to show you exactly where we actually create the skill. So in Cowork, there is a customize button over here on the left-hand side. Here we can do a lot of plugins. So all these plugins are third-party plugins. So if you have data sitting outside of Microsoft that you want to ingest, you can do that. But you can see over here, we've got skills. And I can click on add. And I've got an option of new skill or upload a skill. So if you get that skill from your mate at the Barbie, you can click on upload skill. If you want to create your own, you just click on new skill. And what it's going to do is it's basically going to say to you, all right, cool, I want to create a new personal skill, guide me through defining the skill name, and it will basically go through systematically what it wants you to create. Now I'll show you, I've already done this. I'll basically show you over here. I said to it, I wanted to create this. And again, I went to Copilot and I said, give me a prompt to create a good skill, pasted that in for what I wanted to do. And off it went and built that skill out. So you can see over here, it built a skill.md file. And you can see over here, I'll show you quickly my OneDrive, where that sits. So it'll automatically add it to your OneDrive folder. And once it's added to your OneDrive folder, it takes about 3 to 5 minutes. And then that skill is live within your Cowork. All right. So while that's loading over here, I just want to show you over here where it actually goes through and it starts asking you if you want to approve certain things. Here you can see it's got 98 for one of them, 89, 88, 32, 32. So any skill that you bring in that it hasn't created, it'll basically do a review on every single time. So if you have a look over here, you can see under Cowork, Documents, Cowork, Skills, there is the Signal Scout skill that it created. And I'll just open the document for you. You can see it's all basically just text. And it's showing you what the overview is, when to use it. So you can see over here, preparing for a customer, partner, or board conversation about an external topic, when not to use, quick starts, core instructions. And all of this is built out by Copilot itself anyway. So you can basically come in here, refine it just with text changes, make it a bit better, and then it'll always utilize that for you. So what I did is I then went and I said to it, okay, I want you now to do some research on, let me show you up here. I want you to do some research on smart AI glasses. All right, and I said to it that I want it to basically use the Signal Scout that I've created, and I want it to basically do research on that. Now, that skill of mine had a predefined output of always give me a dashboard. So what it did is it built this dashboard out where it basically telling me what the smart glasses are, what's changed, what the positive case of these smart glasses is, what the risks are, how we're going to manage it as human beings, some of the hard questions, isn't Google glasses that fail, that type of stuff. So basically, every single time I ask it to go and do research and it utilizes the skill, I'm going to automatically get a dashboard that looks like this, irrelevant of what it's going to go research. The output sits in that skill and it's predictive all the time. So as soon as you find something that works really well for your business, you can then go and build that skill and make sure it does that the same time same way every single time it does it. So skills are super important. I think it's probably one of the kickers that we have. And there's so many websites out there that have got awesome skills pre-built. So I always, before building a custom one, will go and look and see what's available. And if it is available, download it and then maybe just make changes to that one rather than starting off fresh. But it's so easy to start off fresh that we just utilize AI itself. So moving into the cost management aspect of it. So it's all great that we have this capability, but how much does it cost? And that is an answer that I cannot give you today, because it is so varying depending on the user that is utilizing it. So I'm going to show you what we can control, but there is a lot that we cannot control. And I'll explain that in a second. So like I said, layer 1 access, prerequisite, every single user needs to have a Microsoft 365 Copilot license. Then the layer 2 is we move into a metered layer. That can either be a prepaid, so in other words, we can buy Copilot credits, and that'll be bought at a 25,000 per query pack, which is probably the safest way to do it in my opinion, because at least that is predictable from a cost perspective. When those credits run out, Cowork will stop working. Okay, so at least we're not going to get a bull shock $10,000 down the line, but we are able to add those pay-as-you-go. Or you can link it to an Azure subscription, and that is fully pay-as-you-go. So you basically just let it run and do its thing. Now, from a credit usage perspective, so I often get asked this when we're actually building out a Cowork strategy for some clients, is, all right, cool, so how many tokens is a single prompt going to utilize? And the answer is I don't know. The answer is that we've got a breakdown. So depending on the model, the large language model that it calls, is about 40% of the cost. The retrieval, so the input and output, uses tokens on both sides, okay? That's about 30% of the cost, and then the tool and then the runtime, how long it runs, is 20 and 10%. So that's how we break out the cost. But you can see the biggest cost is the models that it's going to utilize. And then once we've sorted the models out, it is around how much time with the retrieval of the input and output tokens that it has. So to break that down a little further, I've created a little bit of this is just the pricing. So each pay-as-you-go credit is cost about 2 New Zealand cents per credit. Microsoft was very kind to us. They gave us a commitment tier of about 15,000 New Zealand dollars a month, and then you'll get about, what is that? Jeepers, not even a cent off. It's like a half a cent off on per credit for you to do a commitment for. So these are called P3 commitments. I really think it's American focused because the size is massive. So for all intensive purposes in New Zealand, we focus on either those prepaid credits that we buy at 380 New Zealand dollars per month per 25,000, or we link it on a pure pay-as-you-go to Azure for that. So a little bit of a breakdown. So now I've done lots of tests in Cowork to try and get as accurate as possible for the use cases. Now, these tasks are light, medium, and heavy, okay? But now the problem is that my light task would be triage my inbox, okay? And that will come to about $2 to $4 for that task, okay? But my colleague can say, triage my inbox, but I want you to go through all 6 years of my inbox and make sure that you triage everything. That's still triaging his inbox, but it's so complex and so much data that could cost anything from $25 to $50. And the problems that we put in as the end user, we as a business cannot control, okay? The only thing we can control is spend caps and how many tokens each user is allocated, all right? Once it hits that spend cap, it will shut off. It won't work anymore, which is a good thing. But I'm of the opinion that if a tool is adding so much value, stopping it halfway through the month is great because you're not going to get a bull shock, but it also then just pushes us back a bit. Well, we were utilizing the technology for 15 days, and now we can't utilize it anymore. But there is light, medium, and heavy tasks. A heavy task would be analyze these 6 months of spreadsheets, find me common trends, that type of stuff, and we can go up to $25 plus. I was telling Liam, my colleague, I did a task the other day, quite a heavy task, I'll admit, but it came to about $107 for that task to be completed. So you really can get it up there, but we do have those controls from a cost perspective. So from a credit, so if we do buy that prepaid credit bundle of 25,000, we can either pull that at a tenant level, so the whole tenant can draw from it, or we can say to it, okay, fine, each user is going to get 2,000 credits, and they're not going to be able to go past 2,000, so that one person doesn't use all of those credits. Or we can say a certain business unit or group of users can get 10,000, others can get 3,000, others can get 4,000, etc. So we do have a way to basically deal out those credits as we purchase them. So just a quick one just to show you what it looks like from an admin view perspective. So in the, here it is here. So in the admin center, I'll just jump in here quickly. We have I mean, it's a pretty cool dashboard that Microsoft has built. I don't know why that's not showing up. Weird. Give me a sec. Let's turn. So it's a pretty cool dashboard that Microsoft has set up for us. So basically, we've got a overview of all the agents being utilized within our business. This is more on an AI level, but then under Cowork itself, you'll see active users, you'll see how many tasks the users are utilizing it for, how many monthly credits have been consumed, who's nearing their credit limit, what the usage looks like, are we trending up, trending down. And then under the cost management itself, we are able to create a bunch of policies. Okay, so these policies are, like I said, the policies that we can create for the users to utilize the tokens themselves. So I'll just give us a quick name and then next, and then you can see over here. So here we can see we can either limit it on a tenant level, or we can set monthly limits to a specific user and set those limits on a user for them to not be able to utilize 3,000, 4,000 credits, whatever it may be. Then we can then set what we want these credits to be utilized, and then over here we set the billing method that we want. So once we've created this policy, all the consumption will come in over here where we'll see how many users have it and how many users are utilizing it, etc. Now, just a quick word of warning, because I found the hard way of this. If you have multiple policies, Microsoft made the decision to take the least restrictive policy. So if you create two policies and you say, all right, cool, Craig, this policy says you get 2,000, but this one says you get unlimited, Craig's going to get unlimited tokens. Okay. So just be aware of when you're breaking these out that you don't overlap users, because that user is going to get the least restrictive policy that there is. I know why they did it. Cool. So really from a Cowork perspective, it's about giving it tasks, and it's about giving it the capability to do things on your behalf. It's not a better way of doing things, it's a different way of doing things. I think the amount of questions I get purely around Outlook, just saying, hey, I've got Microsoft 365 Copilot, but I wanted to be able to triage my inbox automatically. I wanted to be able to draft me emails automatically. We're never going to see that in Microsoft 365 Copilot now that we have Cowork, in my opinion. I mean, I might be wrong, but I think that's going to stay a prompting engine. I want you to draft this. I want you to reply to that type of thing. And Cowork, if you're really looking for that automation piece from an individual perspective, Cowork is going to be that tool that you're going to have to go to for that. That's where you're going to be able to create that automation, those signals. If an inbox comes in from our manager, quickly draft me an email, keep it in my drafts inbox, and then, or my drafts folder, and then when I get to work, I'll quickly review it and then send it off type of thing. And I do a lot of that, not with my manager, but I do a lot of it with architecture design. So I've created one where if someone sends in an email saying, cool, we'd like you to review this architecture, basically that architecture goes through an agent, it uses best practices that Microsoft has, it does an evaluation, and I get the output of that evaluation for me to actually go and review and see if there's any changes that need to be made. And then I'll have a look at it as well. So I'll use it for both angles of an evaluation as well as in a creation perspective. So I'm sure you can think of things that you evaluate within your business. Perhaps there's a nice way for you to get the inputs from an email, from a SharePoint creation file, from a Teams message, whatever that input is. Cowork can create that trigger for you. And then once that trigger kicks, Cowork will use that skill that you've created to basically do some of the work for you, not all of it. So yeah, that was basically a semi-quick intro to Cowork. I really do encourage you guys to play with it. It is a great tool, but please put your limits on or buy those prepaid bundles. I would hate for Alex to get a phone call and say, well, you guys told me about Cowork and now we've got a $100,000 bill to pay. But it is a really cool tool. And if you have any questions, I'll be hanging around afterwards. So with that, I'll hand over to Liam, who will take you through some licensing, hopefully some tips and tricks for you to save on licensing so you can pay for Cowork. But with that, thank you very much. I hope that was helpful, team.
Awesome. Hey guys, I'm Liam. I look after the Modern Workplace portfolio, more from like a licensing, I guess, perspective. Some of you might have seen me on some of the calls. So I guess a lot of what I do is around like right sizing and making sure your licensing structure's, I guess, done correctly, optimized, and obviously you're not paying insane amounts for stuff maybe you aren't using, or doing stuff that's compliant or non-compliant. So it's a lot of what I play in. Look, I've only got a few minutes today that I'm just going to go through some of the key updates we've seen over the last sort of 3 to 6 months. Microsoft's end of financial year, if you didn't know, ends in June. So what we tend to see is all the updates come through July, August, sort of coming through now. So I guess there's a couple of really key points that are worthwhile talking about today. Some of you might have seen some of the new capabilities that were added. Most, I guess, in layman's terms, they gave more products for no extra cost, which is very unlike Microsoft. So if you haven't seen them, have a little look. So a couple of key shout outs from the SMB side. So Business Basic, Standard, Premium. Anybody using those, you've now got a 100 gig mailbox. That should have already rolled out by now. They did say August 1st, but I'm noticing that slipping as per Microsoft. So that's pretty normal. So have a look at that. For some of the enterprise SKUs, anyone using those E3, E5 products, one of the big shout outs was around Defender for Office 365. So not sure if anyone's using that at the moment, but that's all your email filtering, safe attachment links, things like that. That was now included into E3, which wasn't actually previously, which is kind of mind-boggling. But if I'm honest, that's why we tend to try push a lot of people to the Business Premium stack, just based on price and how powerful it is. And if you are one of those E5 customers and you're up around that top end of enterprise products, they've added in a bunch of Intune features around Plan 2, and more importantly around like remote assist and things like that. So, being another way to do things like TeamViewer has done in the past. So a few capabilities that has been actually added with no extra cost. There was also a price increase in July 1st. Some might have seen that, may not have been affected by it yet. But surprisingly, Business Premium was actually the only SKU unaffected. So anybody using that, that's sort of why we tend to push you over to that SKU. So just be aware of that. But it's quite nice that they've actually added a few features without, charging you more for it, even though there has been an increase. Last thing I was just going to quickly cover off before I pass over to the Veeam team was just some of the promos. So Microsoft run a lot of promos for all of their CSP products that they consider, I guess, premium. So what I mean by that, usually it's Business Premium, E3, E5. For those of you that haven't heard of E7, that's another SKU now added. And Copilot and a few other Dynamics products. But reason why I raise this is because, again, part of what I do around right-sizing customers and licensing structures is to make sure also you're taking advantage of any sort of features and promos that you might not know of. And there's sometimes just cheaper ways to do stuff to actually move up as a license to like an E5, depending on the promo that's applied. So this is something that's published every month from Microsoft. It's customer-facing. You can find it and download it as well. But it's something that we'll look at every time we do like a licensing audit with you guys, is to make sure that we check if we can take advantage of any of these promos and lock in for like a year or even up to 3 years to save you some money and try to stop you from getting affected by these increases as well. So something we always do, always worthwhile checking before you start looking at any new products and capabilities. And it's a really big part of what Microsoft did. And I just don't think a lot of customers realize these exist, because we obviously live and breathe this every day. You're in your BAU, you probably haven't seen a lot of this. So something to worthwhile always checking out if you are looking at your renewal dates coming up. Where's your licensing going? It's just a huge part of obviously what we do and sort of value add we want to provide to you all. So just like I say, another part to have a look at. That's my quick 5 minutes anyway. So I'll pass over to Ron and John. One of them? Ron and John. Sweet.
Perfect.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Microsoft team. That was quite excellent. I feel a little embarrassed we don't have so many slides for on, do we?
No.
Or demos. So there you go. My name is John Sprague. Just for context, I am a sales executive at Veeam. None of you are my customer. I just happen to live in Tauranga. So you are all safe. Ron is my systems engineer. We're a team of about 13 or 14 in New Zealand. So I'll start at the beginning. Who actually knows? A show of hands. Let's make this interactive. Who's actually heard of Veeam before? I am impressed. That's excellent. I'm just tempted not to be the harbinger of doom because I just want to start by saying, that's really impressive technology from Microsoft. It's exceptional. Kind of love AI. But also, I'm from the realism world of IT. So I just need to kind of temper myself. So it's going to make this a bit interactive here. I've got some questions. I'd like you to have a look at the questions. They're all quite easy to answer, but you go for your life. And just get a show of hands. Who's brave enough to answer in the positive to this question? Anybody know their data inside out? No. Anybody confident with the hand of that one? Cool. Nope. Okay. So think about what's actually slowing down your AI rollout, because technology is phenomenal. Microsoft, for example, extraordinary the work they're doing. I love it. Use it myself. But that's the question. No takers? Any two more? Anybody want to put a hand up to that? Last one? Okay. So we've got no takers. So there is obviously a disconnect between the technology layer and the business adoption and how comfortable we feel as an organization. I think that's fairly reasonable. We've got to take a pretty measured approach. So, if after that presentation from Microsoft on Cowork, if everybody in this room is going to put their hand up and say, I'm sold, I'm going to buy it for every user in my organization, I could probably save us 14 minutes and we can go and get a drink at the bar. If not, we probably want to have a bit of a conversation about Veeam. Not that we're going to help you, but it's more about how do we, as an organization, support our customers so that they can move forward with tools like Cowork more safe. We can put some guardrails to support you, that you feel a bit more comfortable. And that's really where we're trying to get to in this conversation. So let's take you a step back. You may know Veeam, but let's actually take a step back, and I'll let Ron take on a bit of a journey. You have to hold this one apparently.
Awesome. So by way of introduction, I'm Ron. I'm a solutions engineer for Veeam. I've been with Veeam for about 5 years, and the reason I point that out is I've seen obviously the changes in what we've had to adopt to cater for. And this is actually my second time at Veeam. So the first time I worked for Veeam was about probably 14 years ago, 12 years ago. Lost track of time, obviously. And essentially what we're saying is we've actually seen a new, how we've had to evolve, right? So we're calling it the third era. So the first era was when we just needed to protect data and recover data as quickly as possible, give customers the ability to do granular recoveries, do DR, the thing that everyone knows Veeam for. And then we've obviously had from natural disasters to hardware failures, etc. Things evolved to cyber threats, everything from ransomware to malicious activity around encryption, exfiltration. And we needed to adapt and provide customers the ability to protect and be resilient across that environment. And what we are seeing now is obviously we could cater for humans making mistakes or ransomware, etc. But when you bring in agentic, or when you bring in that scale, that speed at which AI can work in, our traditional systems of protecting and recovering data falls short. So we've had to adapt again. And essentially, that's what we're talking about. At the scale at which AI can impact our organizations, maliciously or not. Usually it's the person who's implementing these AI technologies into workplace is not trying to do anything wrong. But what do we do in that case? And that's where this third era of data protection from a Veeam perspective comes into play, which is why we're out talking to customers around helping them.
I feel it's a bit of a hand the microphone over game. So what we tend to do, if we think about it in terms of your Microsoft estate, we want to back this up. Excellent. All right. That's reasonably easy. And we tick the box on that, and we want to be able to recover. In fact, we want to be able to recover really quickly. We want to be able to prioritize. We want to be able to reach into our backups and we want to take one piece of data, one file from some employee who left X or Y years ago. And that's pretty easy stuff. But when we're using our tools today and we want to implement an AI technology, we want to really make sure that the experience is the best. So how many of you would say there's quite a few documents in our SharePoint repository that may be duplicates, there may be different variations of documents? What information are we actually asking Copilot to look at in order to get us the information that we need? Is there anything that we can do to make that experience better? And I'm not suggesting that we go on the odyssey of cleaning up every single piece of data. We see the issue. Other issues are about, what's actually in our backups. I'm not the harbinger of doom, but maybe storage prices for some of our providers, are not necessarily getting cheaper. So maybe there's some work that we could do there. So there's a number of reasons why we might want to intelligently make decisions about what we're backing up, what we're storing, and what we're reviewing. I think that would be a logical. Not that SharePoint isn't a phenomenal tool, absolutely essential to the business on the daily, but if we're going to use these tools and we're going to pay money to Microsoft to get outcomes, we want to make sure that they're the best outcomes that we can get. So Veeam plays a role in that.
The only thing I'll add to the detection piece and discovery piece is, like I mentioned, Veeam has predominantly been in the backup space, so we kind of would have protected everything that you throw at Veeam, right? However, now that we've got AI in the mix, we kind of need a little bit more context. So in the M365 space, where I can really relate to where we are now keeping the data in terms of emails, OneDrive, SharePoint, and information in Teams, for us to be able to see what changes are being made by AI, first of all, we need to know what information sits within those repositories. So we are finally saying that, yeah, we can protect everything that you point us to, and we can recover everything that you point us to, but AI is not following the same rules that humans do when it comes to accessing those that data. So we probably need to also flag that you've got sensitive information here that is not being protected. Please protect it. Or you are actually, AI is accessing and manipulating this data, which it shouldn't have access to, but because somebody's been creative in how they're asking AI, they're actually having access to that data. So those sorts of things are coming into play from a detection piece. Now, you may be asking, how has Veeam come from a data protection solution to now having tools to detect all of these things? It's essentially, and this is a more of a Veeam update, is we didn't do it ourselves. We acquired a company very recently called Security, so Security AI, and that's what they're specialized in. They basically have themselves implemented a solution that can have connectors into your M365 world, your unstructured data world, your Azure other hyperscaler world. I didn't want to say a dirty word in a Microsoft event. But they've got connectors to all of this environment, which pretty much everybody, is in a hybrid or multi-cloud state. So the ability to get that information and be able to do that classification, give context and risk to, is something we are now able to provide because we have obviously now got that IP and solution. And this particular product, while it handles the detection, classification, risk piece, how we are merging together is where we are able to provide the next pieces, which John and I will talk about shortly.
Bear with us, I needed that. We did spend quite a bit of money on security AI. That is a DSTM, a data security posture management tool. That is not what we're selling. What we sell is backup to your M365 estate at a granular level as an express in case there's some emergency dependency. We're still doing the same thing that we've always done. But what we're actually trying to integrate into this, that intelligence as to exactly what's there, what that personal information looks like, what the AI tools are actually got access to. And I think that's kind of, I don't know what organizations everybody here comes from, but if you work in the healthcare or the insurance industry or the financial industry, whatever industry you work in, there are certain regulations. If you're anything like me, the first thing I want to do is I want to know, what does my boss earn? Who are the 3 people in the organization that are most likely to date me because they've got financial wealth? Whatever it is that you weird people do personally with AI, it's all good. That stuff's going on. That stuff's going on. You know it is. And that's kind of the fun stuff. But there is, the sort of personal identifiable, the health records, the other stuff. I'm quite confident that we've put guardrails around this in our organizations, but at the permissioning's there, we know that we over-permission people in our organization. You can be damn sure we've over-permissioned tools in our organization to access information. And the concern is here, you just need to get some visibility, put some guardrails around what a Cowork, Copilot is able to do. And then we can press the button and accelerate the use of that AI technology. That's really what we're talking about.
Awesome, thanks. I guess the last piece is around restoration if things go wrong. So when we have visibility, when you've got an understanding and context of the changes that are being made in production. So again, previously, we didn't necessarily focus on the production because you had a last line of defense in your backup. But when AI is making changes and having an impact in production, and we are keeping track of that, if it's negatively impacted, that some agent or agents have manipulated data along the way, and you'd like to be informed or notified when that happens, and maybe restore very specifically the files that were impacted. So you may not want to undo the whole AI chain, but these files were impacted and you'd like to restore just that portion. So giving you the visibility, the auditability, and ability to say, this is the point in time where I can see files were deleted and I'd like to restore just that, I think is quite powerful. Because it doesn't stop you from being productive and reiterating and working with AI and making huge gains, but it gives you that safety net that if something goes wrong, that you can see it in a very visual way, you get notified in a good way, and see the risk and be able to undo. We're calling it undo AI. Obviously, that's the marketing term, but essentially the use case behind that is giving you the option of recovering from that, which is going to be a very common disaster, right? It used to be, like I said, hardware failures and natural disasters that we used to cater for, then ransomware, and now at scale, we're going to be looking at these sorts of changes and recoveries that we're going to be having to deal with.
Okay, so just to wrap it up, thank you, Ron. Appreciate your time. We're not here to spruik anything. We don't have any charts about our cost, etc. And in fact, just because Veeam is a leader in this space doesn't mean there aren't other providers that are doing this. This is what we're seeing across the market. These are the sort of questions you should be asking of yourselves, your organizations, of your providers. Talk to PB Tech. What does this actually look like? Yeah. What does this cost, frankly? Is that equation going to be worthwhile for us? What's our first step into this? Yeah, we've got plenty of people happy to talk to you about it, but you will see this as an evolution that's happening in our space. I just encourage you, put your hand up, ask the question, and hope that was useful. Enjoy the extra food because there's quite a lot of it left. Dessert is coming, apparently. Even more food. That's what we need in excess. Thank you, everyone. Cheers.